The crew of 323rd Bomb Group, whose aircraft came back to Burtonwood, we don't know why they came back to Burtonwood, they were on guard duties in Germany, so they weren't flying air marauders at that particular point. But the fact is, they did come back. We wouldn't be looking at the surviving remains of Mr Shorty today had those aircraft not been brought back. What happened after that? Well, we know that 50 years ago, last year, the remains of Mr Shorty were found in a scrapyard at Warrington, not that far from Burtonwood, but obviously the airfield had had a clear out of aviation-related scrap. And Mr Shorty was found buried under a whole mass of aviation-related wreckage. And if you can imagine, as the Mary Rose, people have heard of the Mary Rose, the parts of the Mary Rose we have today in Portsmouth were those that were buried under the mud and thereby preserved. The tail section of Mr Shorty was the most buried under aviation-related debris. And it was spotted there by a team from Merseyside Aviation Society. And it was Ken Ellis who went on to become probably the best editor of Fly Past magazine has ever had. He's now retired, but still writing in the aviation books, and has been a good friend of this museum. And they were looking for the ball turret of a flying fortress, which they found. And that's on the American B-17 in the American Air Museum at Duxford today. But in doing so, he recognised that this was a Marauder, and the whole of the Marauder was there. The wings were there, the turret was there that had been taken off the top when it was dismantled, the nose was there, the throttle box was there. So they passed that information on to somebody else, and the East Anglian Aviation Society rolled up with a low loader and loaded up the aircraft. And as they were doing so, the other parts of the aircraft weren't so well protected, so the middle part was virtually falling to bits as they put it on the low loader. The nose was pretty fragile, but they took what they had and they put it to Duxford, and they put it in a hangar. And we got black and white photographs taken in the 70s of it being there. Now, Duxford wasn't the same developed museum that you've got today. Lots and lots of groups used it. And there was a whole pile of stuff there. Subsequent to that, the East Anglian Aviation Society went to Bassingbourn, where they had the use of the control tower, the old control tower. Bassingbourn is still a military barracks today. And they developed a museum, but sadly they didn't have any room for Mr Shorty, who couldn't get it in. So the Brett brothers, the Brett family, a father and son, who had what was known as the Rebel Air Museum at Andrewsfield. And Andrewsfield was the first Marauder base to be constructed in Essex. It's now known as Great Sailing Airfield, and it is northwest of Braintree. It was the only one constructed by the Engineering Battalion of the United States Army, and the only airfield in Britain to be named after a person, Colonel Andrews, who would have led the invasion air force on D-Day, but for the fact he was sadly killed in an air crash on the way to Iceland, so somebody else had to step up and take his place. Whether that changed their minds or not, but they decided then that they would all call these airfields by numbers rather than names. So that was why Andrewsfield was the only one to be named